I always like the paintings that come from a heavenly view, this, because you see it in a different way than you do, like you said, if you did it horizontally. It gives you almost a sense you're floating over that area.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And you haven't been over a helicopter over that area either, right? I mean, yeah, that's you being able to somehow. I've always been amazed because it seems like you're able to almost elevate your eyes view of as an artist over that without ever having been like that.
It's the ravens,
Ah, okay, that's it.
you know. It's the ravens that I speak to every morning.
And why is that? Why do you speak to the ravens?
Why?
Yeah.
Because they're relation. They're in every one of our stories. They are tricksters. They are our saviors. They are characters. One of the main one of the main cast in our legends. And the ravens, of course, um, they're very adaptive.
And smart. Very smart.
So I speak to them. Sometimes I scold them. Sometimes I just say, "Hey," but always there's a God you call. There's a God you call. And I noticed, once in a while, you would get one that's has a distinct feature, and they end up following you.
Mm.
It happened a couple of times when I moved away to across town. Within a week, this raven with one tattered wing was sitting up there.
Following you. Well, they say that the ravens and crows are the only birds that actually can identify a person, a single
Oh,
person.
definitely.
Yeah. And so if you're
Yeah,
speaking to them every day, if you have a dialogue, they have a dialogue back. You may not be able to
hmm
translate it, but you can understand it
yeah,
clearly.
it is.
And I find that in your paintings. I love, maybe that's one of the things, because I love ravens as well. I've always been drawn to them.
Yeah,
Ever since I was a little boy, I've always found them interesting and unique. And, they have characters. They work as a team. You can hear them talking. You can almost see them thinking. And so you have one painting in there, which is I don't know what it's called. It's the cracked earth, which is the one with the twister, little dust devil, and it's just Mother Earth basically brought to her knees in some respect, I guess.
hmm
Tell me about that painting.
above a parched earth.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's the one I started out, a couple of years ago when Evid was had an extreme drought. Standing ponds and stock ponds were drying up. In fact, they were to the point where it was really dangerous. Some big ponds that sat year round for livestock out there were drying out and getting smaller and smaller. So the area around them became really muddy, and many horses got trapped in the mud.
Hmm.
And there were a lot of horses died, in those traps. But it was that time when I was seeing the cracked earth around it, the dried cracked earth, and also being very conscious of what we're doing to the environment. How in the Navajo way, in Navajo, it's always about honoring the earth, giving the earth its offering every so often, never forgetting the earth, every single day praying and honoring the earth and speaking the name of the earth and placing an offering. And they say when this thing stopped happening, when we stopped offering, making honor to the earth, great calamities will befall us again. So as part of that, and being that we have been, we have came through the four different worlds,
Mm-hmm.
this being the fourth. You know, my mother over a year ago, a year and a half ago, way before the pandemic even was around. One day, as I was talking to her, we're talking about sheep and goats and old memories, and all of a sudden, she got quiet. Well, it's just for a moment, and then she said, "Something's happening." She said, something is upon us. Do you see the sky? And through the window, I could see no change. It was just a blue sky, northern Arizona, Shonto Plateau sky above Black Mesa. And she said, there's a great change coming. And she said, there's going to be great suffering. You know, there will be great suffering. And then she said, but in the end, it's all for the good. She said, because we're going into a new time, change time. I saw that as an opening into the fifth world.
Mm.
Maybe possible, just a whole possible transformation of what is human and the earth association to animal. So the change time has always been about that, evolving of the evolution of the being, the spirit. So it could be the change time, if not in form, maybe in our outlooks, just a paradigm shift.
And do you think she was talking about the pandemic when she was talking about this great?
It was later on when all this thing came down, when I realized, wow, there was a great change coming.
Very great.
Very change. You can't even find toilet paper for a while. Yeah. So that's how I read it, and but she kind of laughed after that, and then we got back to talking whatever we're talking about. So.
But she felt something.
She did.
Yeah.
She was always a seer. Her mother was a seer.
Mm.
So I'm just a vision quester.
Mm-hmm. But she was a seer. Yeah, they both were.
Well, she's a weaver all her life.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing weavers, rug weavers. Later on, my sister said, you know what my mom's been saying lately? I said, what? She said, you better get ready to move underground because there's a big heat coming.
Mm.
I said, whoa. I said, Mom, slow down.
One calamity at a time.
Let's get past this.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, so it's that's what I was thinking about when I painted that above parched ground, and the ravens, the shadow of the ravens, again, and then the distant, staggering dust devil.
Yeah, what is a dust devil? What's the meaning? Is there a meaning to it to you?
Well, they say it's a kind of a manifestation of the spirit.
Mm.
I guess people call ghost spirit. I really have never heard any association of a good spirit with that.
Mm.
It's always yeah, get out of the way, yeah. It'll contaminate you.
Mm.
You'll suck a little bit of goodness out of you.
Mm.
So you cannot be run over by a dust devil.
Mm.
And my grandmother used to throw sticks at it, and she says, when the dust devil's going a certain way, it's kind of neutral. If it's going then when it's going the other way, she said it's a bad spirit.
Mm.
I mean, I would sit on top of the mesa way down there in the evening. In the summertime, I sat on the mesa where I see the whole valley below me.
Right.
The road system, hogans here and there. I've seen dust devil form and just go on the road. Just on the road. Then way up here at somebody's old hogan, I take a little detour and go check on that old hogan. I said, wow, there is something to that.
Yeah.
So my grandmother said, if you throw a stick at it hard, you will hear a sound like a dried goat hide. You'll hear a thud. So, but I never stuck around to throw anything at it. like skedaddled.
When I was a kid, one time I remember in New Mexico building a fort, and I threw a big bunch of dirt up, and at that very time, a dust devil came and completely knocked me down. I mean, knocked me down hard, and out of the blue. And I remember thinking, that's not normal.
No, no. Well, the first hat I ever had, little cow straw hat, the dust devil took that.
Mm.
And I searched for days in the direction that it went. Among the sage hills, among the flats, among the arroyos, I never found my hat.
Mm. That's
So
a painting. That's a painting.
I was a little kid. That is a painting.
That's a painting. Yeah, it's a very good painting in a lot of ways. It gives you so much latitude how you would want to do
Yeah.
it.
So my hat was so precious. My uncle bought me that hat. It was a wonderful hat, and it was Stetson with just a little something Bailey or something.
Yeah.
And the dust devil took it.
There's the title.
My brother was so sorry for me. My brothers were so sorry for me. They made me a hat. The top they put the oatmeal cylinder. They cut it out like that, put a border around it, and stiff it out, nice little, painted really nicely, black hat. It actually fit me.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
Yeah.
That would be one I'd like to have a picture of.
Yeah. A hat. The dust devils took my hat. It would be a good kid story.
It would be a great kid story. Yeah. There's a lot of morals. There's a lot of things that you can come from it, because you still end up with a hat, but you end up with one that's made out of love.
Yeah.
And kindness.
Exactly.
That would be very interesting. Yeah. I hope to see that one.
Yeah, there was one fine hat for a while.
Yeah.
They had kind of like an Abraham Lincoln thing.
Yeah, I bet. If it was an oatmeal thing.
And then John Cleese worked for me for $300 a week. And,
as an actor, I assume?
Yeah. And because he was one of the English, they had a thing called Cambridge Circus, which was another review. And I bought some of that material, and I talked John into going out on the road for me.
Oh my God.
But then,
so John Cleese went around colleges doing your play?
Doing the play, doing the establishment in Cambridge Circus. And then one year, my agent, a wonderful guy named Roger Vorse, who just died a couple of months ago, said, "We got a problem. I can't sell the show in colleges. Political satirical theater is dead." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, look at the world. You got Harold Wilson in England. You got Charles de Gaulle in France. You got Lyndon Johnson here. It is satire."
Yeah.
So
and this is early '60s.
Yeah, and he took me to Toronto to meet a guy named Bill Graham, who was running the Fillmore West. And Bill and I produced a 1 week in the O'Keefe Center in Toronto of the Jefferson Airplane and the Grateful Dead. And that was just the whole beginning of a different direction.
And were they starting just to take off at that point in time?
They were just really, it was 1967. Yeah, they were really starting to move. It was a good move for them, and it's the first time anybody's ever done in a legitimate theater, the San Francisco music.
And how did you get them to come aboard? Because they were still fairly big names, right?
Bill Graham was running Fillmore West, and they were big bands in San Francisco. And so what we did was sell the idea of bringing the San Francisco sound to the East Coast.
And you're still early, you're what, in your 20s?
I was in my late 20s.
Late 20s.
In 1967, I guess I was about 27. And worked with Bill, did that show. First concert I ever did was 55,000 people in front of the Toronto City Hall for a freebie with the Airplane and the Dead.
And what was your job in that?
I was the production manager.
And so what does a production manager do?
Well, I arranged the sound, the light, got the bands, got a stage, negotiated with the mayor and the police and the city people. I just produced a show.
And was that intimidating? Because that music was the hot music of the day, and now you're working with these bands, and you're still, I'm sure you're a fan as well.
Not as much. I mean, I looked at it as this was a new kind of theater, and it made absolute sense. And because we were doing it in a theater, because we were doing it in the O'Keefe, you know, I was working with all the things I was used to. And we had a great show. It's a big deal. Then I went on tour with the Airplane for 5 or 6 months.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, great group of people. I mean, I remember one place in Ohio, I can't remember exactly where it was, but one city after we'd been out on the road for about 4 months, Grace walked off stage and the audience was yelling for an encore, and she said, "I am not singing White Rabbit again." And I said, "Oh, come on." She said, "No, I'm through. I'm not singing it anymore." "Okay, fine. We'll never get out of here alive, but if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do." And there were, 10,000 kids out there yelling, "White Rabbit, White Rabbit." She finally folded and did it. So we survived it. We got out.
Yeah, that's hilarious. And so you worked with the Airplane for?
Oh, about 6 or 8 months.
And then what happened from there? This is 68?
Then we talked, then I met a group of people from Crawdaddy magazine who wanted to open a concert theater in New York, and had found a place called the Anderson Theater, which was down below what eventually became Fillmore East, but on 2nd Avenue and 4th Street. And we turned it into a concert hall. And we started booking concerts and bringing people in, brought Janis in.
Janis Joplin?
Yeah.
And you knew Janis, I assume? Yeah. What was she like?
She was crazy as hell, but she was wonderful.
Yeah.
The show she played for us, the opening act was B.B. King. The first time B.B. had ever played downtown in front of young white audience.
This is 68?
67, 68.
Yeah.
And we were trying to talk Bill Graham into coming into New York to do a Fillmore East. And we did this for about 4 or 5 months, and finally got Bill to come in and try and do it. And we talked him into it, and we got a theater up the street and opened the Fillmore East.
And so you had Janis Joplin, B.B. King. Who else would have been?
Oh, I think Blue Oyster Cult, who I hated.
Yeah, that's. My wife will hate to hear that. She loves them.
Maria Muldaur.
Oh yeah.
The Incredible Sting Band. Quite a few bands. I remember Peaches and Herb. We had 2 or 3 good black acts. And I remember going into the box office, and Herb of Peaches and Herb was in the box office. And I walked in the box office door, and he grabs his .45 and aims it at me because he's counting his share of the box office. So I learned, as things went along, you just dealt with it. That was all.
And so, and the other people that were working with you at that time, who were they and how old were they?
Well, most of them were I was about a year or 2 older, but there was a guy named Chris Langhart, who was the head of the New York University Theater Department, who became my technical director and worked with me for 20 years after that, and Joshua White, who had the Joshua Light Show. And they were involved in Toronto, and they were involved in the Fillmore East, and we all went to London together and did a concert hall in London called the Rainbow. We all worked on Woodstock together, so we were.
And who was at the Rainbow? What bands?
The Rainbow. We opened with the Who. I had Mountain. My favorite Rainbow story is it's sort of a name drop, but in my office, which was upstairs, my desk was a big sheet of plywood, 4x8 sheet of plywood. And Keith Moon from the Who was up there one night drinking a bottle of scotch, and we were talking. And we had Leon Russell playing on stage. And Mooney all of a sudden said, "Listen, that's Eric." And it was Eric Clapton. And Clapton had been off the face of the earth for 2 years, because that's when he would become a heroin addict for 2 years. And we went downstairs, down this circular staircase, and couldn't see Eric, but you could hear this guitar if you knew who it was.
Yeah, very distinctive.
And in the crook of Leon's piano was this guy wearing a navy watch coat and a hat pulled down over his head. And it was Eric, and the first time he'd played in 2 years. It was wonderful.
And he was playing for the Who?
He was playing with Leon Russell.
He was doing it with Leon Russell.
Leon got him to come over and do it. And so he went back to playing. He cleaned up, and that was it. Whole new career. He's one of my favorite musicians.
So. He's a genius for sure.
Oh, love him. Yeah.
And so you do that for about 5 months?
The Rainbow. Well, we did ran the Fillmore East for about a year. Then I took the Airplane and the Doors to Europe on a tour.
What was that like to work with the Doors?
Well, I had Jim Morrison die on stage on me once.
Tell me about that.
Well, we were in Amsterdam, and he found these people, and these people found him, and gave him a brick of hash the size of his fist, which of course he consumed. Morrison was not very good about being careful about what he did, and he was on stage in the middle of one of the songs and jumped up in the air, looked off the wings, and said to Bill Siddons, his manager, and me, yelled at us, sort of, "This is where I do my famous leap." And he went up and he went down, and he just turned into a puddle. And so we thought he was dead. And we had to stop the show, pull him up, take him to the hospital, have his stomach pumped. He was sick as hell for a day or two. But Morrison was great. He was great.
So how did you continue the show? Did you just, that's it? The whole show's over?
That's it. Well, the Airplane were coming on afterwards, so the Doors cut their set short, and Ray and the rest of the band, Johnny and the rest of them, finished the set without Morrison. And we took Morrison to the hospital, and his manager, Bill Siddons, went with him, and reported back that Jim was in fact going to live so we could finish the tour.
Now, he always used to wear this beautiful first phase concho belt around. Do you remember that?
Yeah, he had a great one, yeah.
And do you remember, at that time when he was doing it, did you have a clue what he had on, or it was just some
Indian
jewelry?
Well, I knew what it was, but I didn't know how good it was. Actually, the other guy, Graham Edge, was the drummer for the Moody Blues, and he used to wear two conch belts like bandoliers over his shoulders, and he loved them. Absolutely loved them.
And so, that was kind of coming into vogue right at that time. And of course, those guys are help pushing it when you see them wearing, when you see Jim Morrison on stage, hip as can be with a first phase concho belt, and the Moody Blues guy has his on. And so did any of that resonate at that point in time that you
Well, I was interested in Indian stuff. I collected, from the time I was a Boy Scout, when I was about 16 or 17, I had started collecting Indian material. I went to the crafts counselor at this camp I was in and said, "I want to make a pair of moccasins." And he said, "What kind?" "There are 500, and gave me a book. So I started reading more and more of the books and getting into it. And I would buy, when I had a little money, I'd buy a piece of material.
Yeah. So Morrison, he recovers from this, and what other great stories would you like to share? Well, I got even with
Morrison didn't play for us in the Fillmore East. He played out in Long Island. And he came in after the show, and I knew Jim pretty well, and we were talking, and he saw the lighting bridge that we had in the Fillmore East, and the way Chip Monk, who was the lighting designer, would get up to it was a bosun's chair. And Jim saw, the way you'd get up a mast. And Jim said, "Oh, my father was in the Navy. I know about bosun's chairs." Yeah. And he said, "I know all about bosun's chairs. I've never ridden in one." And so we said, "Okay, you want to ride in one?" So we put him in the bosun's chair and cranked him up and got him 60 feet in the air. And I yelled up at him, "I'm getting even with you for not playing for us." Tied the thing off to a chair. We went next door and had breakfast. And we could hear him in Radnor screaming, "Get me out of here, get me out of here." So we finally went and got him down.
So at this point, you're now in the publishing business.
Yes.
And where do you go from there?
Well, actually, I was always in the publishing business, if you even go back to the Raz, because we were publishing it. Yeah. We were collating the copies. We were putting them in boxes. I was delivering them. I was the ad salesman. And one of the big lessons I got was I would deliver the magazines, and the managing editor, the managing store manager at Circles Records on North Central says to me, "Hey, somebody on your staff has an ass fetish."
Okay.
Somebody did. It wasn't me. But they'd go, "And that cartoon, that Doper Roper cartoon, you could kill that right now." And I'd say, "Thank you for that." I drew it. They thought I was just a salesperson. Right. So I got a lot of harsh lessons, but I needed them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, of course.
So yes, I've been doing this since '72. On and off, in and out. I love the process. I love the smell of ink. I like printers, the old printer guys. I love that whole scene. So, for better or worse, yes, I'm a publisher.
And when did you buy the magazine, True West?
As I mentioned, True West is a magazine I read as a kid. And I would see it. I'd be going to U of A, I'd go into Circle K, and there it was. It was still being printed on pulp paper, and it looked bad. It looked tired.
Dated.
It looked like it was on its last legs. And so in 1999, two crazy friends of mine and I flew to Guthrie, Oklahoma, rented a car, went to Stillwater, and paid way too much for what was essentially a failing publication. And then I thought, I just knew that I was going to be the hero and I was going to save this old publication. So I changed the paper, which immediately doubled the print bill.
To like a glossy
To
paper.
a gloss.
Yeah.
And I started adding all of these new things that I knew had to be in there to save it. Well, I wish I had $1 for every letter I got that said, "Joe Small's spinning in his grave. You've ruined the magazine," And so now I'm full of self-doubt, and I'm like, God, and I had a partner who didn't want me to change it. And I had people calling me saying, "Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it." And to my answer was,
It's
"Hey,
broke."
it's broke, dude. It's so broke that we're going broke."
Yeah.
And so I really was questioning myself and what I'd gotten myself into. And so somebody called me and said, "Would you like to interview Joe Small's wife? She's still alive, and she's in a nursing home in Austin, Texas." I said, "Oh, God, I'd love to talk to her." So I called her, and she couldn't have been more delightful. And I said, "It's an honor to continue to try to save the magazine." I said, "Elizabeth, I have a question for you. This magazine used to sell 265,000 issues on the newsstand, and now it's 7. What happened?" Here's her quote, and I printed this out, and it's on my wall. "The footnote crowd took over." End of quote. Well, that was very clear to me that the academics, the history nuts who want to argue about was Tom McLaury's hat band silver or brown at the OK Corral, that we got out in the weeds, And so I went back and looked at the early issues from 1953 and 54, and he was doing rodeo and he was doing movie stars and stuff like that because it's a popular history magazine, and it had been hijacked by the academics, and they were the ones who were slowly strangling the magazine. So I knew I was right, but to turn a ship in the middle of the ocean, that's 100 feet long is not any easy task. And it took about 8 years to even turn it.
And how'd you do that?
Well, a guy came. Advice would come in from weird places. A guy comes in the office, says, "I love what you're doing. You're in trouble, aren't you?" And I go, "Yeah." And he'd go, "Don't chase ghosts." And then he'd leave. And I'd go into Carol, my business manager, and I'd say, What does that mean? Well, what it means is, what I took it to mean is, you chase these magic elixirs, these formulas. Or, "Hey, do this, put in a thing about how to make hats, and you'll just do great." You know what I mean, like that.
Right.
And it's not true,
Yeah.
And so you're chasing that.
You have to find your voice.
Well, you have to find your voice, give the audience what it wants, but yet challenge them. I always use the Beatles as the example because the Beatles were they became this phenomenon. They were just replicating American R&B and mirroring it back to us. But they got to a certain point, and they said, the studio said, "Well, you have to use this cover," and they went, "No, we're not going to put any cover on it." Can you imagine that? Can you imagine saying that to a marketing director or the president of Capitol Records and go, "No, you can't do that. There's never been done like that."
No, it's just going to be white.
It's the White Album, okay? It's an iconic, and so you have to do. And that's not easy to do. It's easy to tell that story.
Yes, sure.
But to do that in real life is hugely problematic, and it makes people angry. Well, I love this line. Every great idea makes someone pucker.
Yeah, that's true.
It's so true. And we all want to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results, and that's one of the definitions of insanity. If you're doing the same thing over and nothing's improving, then that's insane.
Right. So how did you do that? What were the steps and things that you did to make the magazine your own, which it is today?
So slowly and surely, I knew a couple things. I knew I could look at the product because I was a fan. I can put my fan cap on and go, okay, what did I want? When I was 14 years old, what did I want to see? Well, I wanted to see outlaws. I wanted to see dead people, on the street, the Daltons lined up in the bank,
Right.
So don't lose that. That's our bread and butter. And I knew that photographs were important. And so Bob McCubbin was my partner, who didn't want me to change the magazine, by the way. But he was a charter subscriber. He was 12 years old, and he was at 1953, and he was a charter subscriber. Well, Bob it was just sold, the biggest collection of outlaw and lawmen original photos in the world.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yes.
That went through Brian LaBelle's auction.
Yes.
Who's done this podcast too, and I encourage people to go listen to Brian's.
Yes. And so we had Bob's Treasure, which was, I sent my production manager to Santa Fe, New Mexico, where Bob's house was, and he scanned for 24 hours off of the original photos. Because when I was growing up, you'd see the same picture of Billy the Kid or Jesse James or Fort Sumner or Fort Bowie, and it's almost like a 10th generation Xerox, that was so bad. But when you see the real photo of Charlie Beaudry with his wife, Manuela, and there's still blood on he had it in his pocket when Pat Garrett killed him, and so the blood's still on the photo. I mean, that'll make that, to a guy like me, that just makes my hair blow back, you know. And so I knew that. If, when in doubt, run great photos, let them breathe. And so that was the first step. The second step was to get people who are smarter than I am, and I've managed to do that easily. Yeah. But I mean,
that is a very true statement.
It is, yeah. I need people to fill in where my skills are less. And then we have a design review every Tuesday. And we argue over covers. People have cried in that. I have a big stamp that says "So what," and there'll be the 20th anniversary of the Oregon Trail, and I go over there and go, boom, put that. So what? So what? I mean, come on, 50 died on the Oregon Trail, or the ones who survived. Okay, now we're getting somewhere, and so that revolutionized our process, because now. Rather than me making decisions, and I like to brag that I've made some mistakes. I love them so much I made them 2 or 3 times. Yeah. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Yeah. And so having that intelligence of the room, to have the brain trust, to have people. Well, we just had a cover, and I lost this bet. It cost me $100. So there's a 5-foot rule in publishing. Are you familiar with that?
No.
All right. So the theory is, you're in an airport, you're going to your gate, you're walking by Hudson News, and you've got to be able, you have 1.5 seconds to get their attention. All right, so that's why there's all these big faces on the cover of magazines. Okay, so me and my art director got this crazy idea. There's this the Cole brothers of the Grand Canyon, and they were called the Knuckleheads.
Yeah, they were very interesting.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
And so they've got this great photo of the two of them. One of them's up on a cliff, and he's got a window, he's got a rope going down. The other one's hanging with a camera into in the canyon, but it's small. And so my partner Ken, who is the actual publisher now, and I'm the executive editor, but he said that cover's going to tank. And so I got real mad, and I this people are going to see how groovy this is and everything. Well, I just paid him $100 2 days ago because. He was right. It was like 22. We all took guesses at what the cover was going to do.
Right.
And he was dead on. That was the wrong thing. So I'm not some Superman. I'm not some wizened.
And how do you judge that? I mean, do you do it strictly off sales out of?
The newsstand is a real Bermuda Triangle of business, and you don't even know if the rackers are putting you out. Many times they put us behind. You can't even see the what's on the cover. So it's really hard to judge. And I kind of have to go with William Goldman, the guy who wrote Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and Sting and everything. He said, nobody knows anything. Everybody says they do, but at the end of the day, we're all guessing. You know what I'm saying? And if you have 47 years of this, which I have, I kind of have that to lean on, but as the Knucklehead cover proves, I can still be dead wrong.
But you could actually judge those numbers and go, okay.
Oh, yeah. No, we get returns, and every week it goes down.
Yeah.
And so the editor guessed 10,500 on the newsstand, and then it went down and it went down to where it was.
In 92, I'm going to say, I met Jimmy Harrison. He had an ad in the paper, and I answered the ad, and he asked me, well, what can you do? I said, whatever you want me to.
What was the ad? What did it say?
I don't recall the exact wording, but it was he needed inlayers.
Like a bench assistant.
Yeah. If he said, you know how to inlay, give me a call or something like that.
Right. And did you know how to inlay?
I called him. Well, I had just come from Gallup. I was inlaying over there at a place called Nugget Gallery. And the guy's name was Steve something, little short guy.
So let's go to Nugget Gallery. So you were working as a bench silversmith for what
I wasn't even a silversmith.
Yeah, you were just cutting stone.
Yeah, just inlay.
And how? And
well, actually, I had come back from the army, and I was there in Gallup, and
when you did the army, did you have to go to deploy to?
No,
no,
it was way
before. Right?
Yeah, before. Yeah. But anyway, so I was there in Gallup, and I didn't have no job. I didn't know what to do.
You're out of the military.
Yeah, so,
you need a job.
So
no training other than military.
Yeah, so I went to a place that a friend of mine said they were hiring. Go do some. You know how to buff? I said, I've seen it done before. You know.
Yeah.
But that's kind of an old joke.
Right.
I seen a little on TV. But anyway, so I went over there and I asked them. I said, "Hey, you guys are hiring. What do you know how to do?" I've made slab earrings, and I can make some heishi or whatever.
Right.
You know how to buff? I said, I seen a little bit. I didn't really. Here, they give me a box of stuff and go buff this.
Right.
So I'm over there watching the other guys next to me.
And was there a line of guys doing this?
There was like a guy on here, over here, and then one behind me, and so I was just watching them and trying to do what they were doing.
Right.
Then I thought I got it clean enough, so because they gave me one to go test me out. And
right.
So when you're done, bring it back up here, and we'll see.
Right.
So I took it. I was there for about probably maybe an hour and a half.
Right. And you hadn't been offered a job or anything. They just said, buff and let's see what you got.
And it was about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I took this bracelet back up there, and they looked at it. You didn't even begin. I was like, what are you talking about? I said, I'd been sitting back there. I said, that thing is hot. Well, that's what we give you. There's that alligator tape.
Uh-huh.
That's what you used to keep your... Well, I didn't know. They said, yeah, no. How about inlay? Do you know how to inlay?
Yeah.
I said, I'm not going to say yes, but okay. So they took me back there and gave me a bracelet, kind of something like this, but it wasn't bezel. It was a cast bracelet, and it had, I think, maybe 5 channels in it, all different shapes.
Right.
So they gave me a little thing of turquoise.
Right.
And
already cut?
No.
It wasn't even cut?
Yeah, they had nuggets.
Oh, wow. So you really had to do the whole thing.
They said, this is not too expensive turquoise, but it's not cheap either. So take your time, and what I want you to do is take this turquoise, 1 stone, and put it in the channel. You don't have to cut nothing, just take that stone and put it in the channel. Right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So they sat me in front of this genie machine with the little 4-inch trim saw.
Right.
And I said, okay. So
what would you do? You would cut the stone?
For that task,
yes.
I already had, in my mind, it went, boom, the light came on. I said, okay, that's all you want.
And when you say the light came on, you thought, hey, I could do this as a living? I could see...
No, not the living, just this piece right here,
or I could do this task.
This
task I can do.
And somehow, in my mind, with anything in my life, when I know I can do something, boom, that thing just...
Yeah.
Okay, let me get it done. Just leave me alone. Go away. Away. Let me do it. And so I did. And
so you put in 5 or 6 different pieces.
And I
brought it back.
And it was like...
And what did they say when
not
you brought
even
it
an
back?
hour.
Yeah.
Just
right.
Done. So I took it back up there, and I said, did you want me to glue it too? And she said, how did you do that? I was like, what are you talking about? You told me to put them... Did I do something wrong? And she said, no, there's no gaps. You didn't cut nothing. That's exactly what you told me to do, right?
You fit the puzzle.
Yeah. So
you have good space relationship.
So she said, okay, when can you start?
Yeah, she knew she found somebody.
Yeah.
Immediately.
And she said, how long you been doing inlay? I said, that's my first time.
Yeah. And so you're a young, you're a young guy.
I'm 20.
You got short hair now.
I'm 20.
Because you're.
I'm 22. No, it was already growing back.
Already starting to grow out.
Yeah, it was.
I have to ask you. I have to ask you. So when you went into the military, did you have long hair?
No, I already cut it.
So you didn't.
It was short.
Yeah, you didn't have to cut it for the military.
I was so ready to go. I just said whatever.
You said you're okay.
Yeah.
When I went to boot camp for the officer training school, I showed up in the master.
You're a hippie.
I was a hippie. And the master and I got my hair cut that day before. Cry? What's that?
Did you cry? Oh.
No, I didn't cry, but I was pissed.
Yeah.
But I knew that was my job and I had to do it, and I was okay, I'd do it. And cut my hair, which I thought was, oh my God, this is so short.
Yeah.
Show up. That gunny sergeant was on my butt just right off. He was like, "You need a haircut," and I'm thinking, "Oh my God,
it's already short."
I just cut it. I cut it off. That's the shortest it's been in like 7 years. So, and I thought it might be even more for you because
my grandma cut my hair.
Yeah,
in California.
Yeah,
I don't know what the whole deal was. I really don't know. Even she came and lived with me for probably about 3 months before she passed away.
And where was she from, your grandmother?
From San Felipe.
So she was San Felipe.
And she had been in California all her life. Well, most of her life after she grew up there. I don't know when she went out to California, but for whatever purpose, she went out there and she stayed. And so she was on dialysis and people were taking care of her and, you know, she needed help, which is, you're supposed to do that for your parents or, you know, your loved ones. So anyway, my uncle brings her to my place of where I live at the time, and he just says, "Here, it's your turn to take care of her." And I kind of, you know, it kind of bothered me that he said it that way, but you know, of course, she took care of me.
Right.
So I take her in, and I'm getting everything ready for her, and finally got all situated about a couple weeks later. And then she's happy. She's going to the elderly center to have lunch and, you know, mingling with people. And I got her set up with the dialysis and no problem. She was going to the casino because they take her over there for bingo or whatnot.
Right.
So finally one day I come home and she was gone. So what happened? I said, "Oh, they came for her." I said, "Who did?" The same guy that dropped her off came and picked her up, said it was time for her to go. Oh, I was so upset.
Yeah.
And then a couple of weeks, she was gone.
Oh, wow.
And so I was talking to my cousin about it the other day, and I've never really met her, so we're kind of forming a bond over with the Facebook thing. So it's just one thing after another. Like, all these things in my life had just come for a reason, everything. And I look back on things now that I can think straight, and I'm thinking straight.
Yeah.
That it's just one of those things. But anyway, back to the...
Back to the story of Gallup, where you've been able to blow them away with a channel inlay piece.
And so that's what they call it, channel inlay.
Yeah, and so where did you go? So how long were you in that job?
I was there for about a year.
Yeah,
and I started making. I can't remember this guy's name, but he was from Zuni, and he just blew me away with his inlay
because he was so good.
And he was fast. But he was always tipsy.
Yeah.
I never went to work that way, but after work I would always, we would hit up something and But yeah, he was just crazy good, and the way they do it is way different from how I do it. But it just fascinated me to see how they do their things, and in my mind I said, "Isn't there an easier way, or can I?" And I start saying, "Well, I'm gonna do it this way," or
And did you take something away from that guy? Were you able to? Yeah. I mean, the Zunis are known for such beautiful channel inlay.
Besides the good relationship or friendship I formed with him, is just knowing how they do it. I don't do it that way, but I know how they do it.
Don't you think? I mean, it seems like from a lot of the silversmiths, native silversmiths that I've talked to, that there is this sharing that they do that individuals want to share, and it's not even tribe doesn't matter. It's really more of how can I help
something you like.
Yeah, like which has happened to you with two different silversmiths, right? Mm-hmm. And do you think that's a true statement, that there is a giving there versus going, I don't want you to see how I do it because I don't want you to knock off?
I was just going to go that route because growing up, my mom, here I go, my mom again, she kind of tried to shelter me all the time because she thought, well, let me help you this way. I'm going to, no, you can't.
Right.
And me, as a young man coming up, I was like, why is she always telling me I can't? Why can't I spread my wings? Why can't I? You know what I mean?
Right.
So one day I sat her down and I said, "Mom, I'm a man. I'm going to be a man. You can't show me how to be a man. Let me fly. Just, if I fall down, just like when I was a kid, pick me back up, dust me off, send me out again. Don't tell me how to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
Let me do it on my own. So she did. She let me go that day.
And how old were you? 16?
No, this was
Older.
35.
Oh yeah. Okay. She is a mom.
Yeah. Navajos are all related by the complex clan system. And they know. I had no interest in being involved in contemporary rug business. Jackson was in the business earlier in my career, and I saw weavers come in and selling rugs. That wasn't me. I was interested in old. My museum showed old. That's what we did.
Now, how many new rugs have you bought over
the time?
That's
it.
21 years.
So there was, Virginia Deal lived right down the road. And she was one of the great master weavers, and she did like these 3x5 tapestries. She got close to $10,000 a piece for, and Bob took me down there and introduced her. He had dealt with her for years. He bought her rugs, and so I went down there a few times. And then this weaving group wanted to come see what we were doing from a Southwestern or a Four Corners weaving guild. It was all Anglo ladies, and so I went down to Virginia and I said, "Can I bring these ladies over to your Hogan and show them your beautiful masterpiece on the loom?" And she said, "Sure." And so I went down there. It was kind of funny because one of the ladies says to me, "Does she ever use the same designs twice?" And I'm going, "No, they never use the same design twice." But she also speaks English.
Right.
I'm totally embarrassed. I hadn't intended to, but I said, "You can actually ask her."
Right.
And so...
Yeah, her English was fantastic.
Yeah, her English was fantastic. So she goes, "Oh, she's so embarrassed." And I'm going, no, I was just teasing you about that. And so, because here's this little traditional grandmother sitting at the loom, so it wasn't such an odd question, but unfortunately. So she says, "Well, Grandma, do you ever use the same designs twice?" And so here was just a great Navajo answer, a lot of insight to me. "Oh, I always use the same designs, just in different places." Very cute answer. Yeah. And you met Virginia plenty of times. Yeah. She was a delight, and she was really smart and very talkative and everything.
And
so
beautiful textiles.
Yeah, and beautiful textiles. She's my cover girl, so that meant a lot.
And let's talk about that when we say cover girl, because you ended up with all this information doing a book, right?
Yeah. And then I slowly started taking fragmented genealogy charts and finding and realizing that this name on this chart was a main name here, it was an obscure name there, and kind of started plugging things together. And I knew the clan system was there and was very alive, but it was very complex. I didn't understand it. So I'd always say when I interviewed, and I started learning that the Navajos use the same terms we do, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, cousin, and everything, like we don't use it. It's a much broader term to them. It can be, a brother can be a clan brother. So I realized that really early on in my interviewing, because they would totally confuse me with all these relationships. And so I started saying, no clans, no clans. I don't want to know anything about clans. I only want brothers, sisters. I want direct relatives, not clan relatives. I didn't really understand what that meant exactly. But after I started plugging the families in enough, and I'd heard clan mentions enough, I finally said, okay, it's time now. So I tried to study what the clans meant, and I said, okay, now I want to know what the clans mean. And so that helped me broaden my genealogy charts and realize that these people were Tangle people and these people were my Deshkeesni. There were several families of them, but if there was several families of them, they lived in one other, that meant there was probably a common relative somewhere back there. So that gave me a target to go looking for how to do it. And I learned how Navajo relationships work, so I knew how to use their family relationships, certainly not against them, but how to get more information from them. So because I'd say, well, did your grandmother have any sisters? And they'd say, I don't know that. And I'd say, well, did your mother have any cousin brothers or sisters? And that's first cousins. So the mother couldn't have had cousins unless the mother had a sister or brother that gave her cousins. So I learned how to maneuver around what they knew to inspire them to tell me what I wanted to know.
Yeah, which is to figure out who all these weavers were.
Yeah, who all these weavers were. And so we did so in the middle of all this, the masterpieces of Toadlena Two Gray Hills became the Master Weavers of Toadlena Two Gray Hills.
And that was the book.
And that's the book. And so it's a 600-page book, and it's
dense.
been very successful.
Yeah, super dense.
It has 23 genealogy charts of the Master Weavers. I thought, and when I was growing up in Southern California, they used to have the Fabulous 52. And on Saturday nights, they played a movie. And they played the movies one night every year, and then they started again. And so they played the best 52 movies. It was called the Fabulous 52, and we all would gather around the TV when I was young and would watch this. So that was going to be one of my themes, the Fabulous 52.
Right.
Because this is just a leftover from my... So I was hoping I could get to 52 Weavers. I think I have 84. So I soon surpassed that.
Yeah.
And people ask me all the time, what's the Master Weaver? What does it mean? I go, it means I like them. It's my book. I can do it anything I want, But they had to have a distinctive style. They had to
original voice.
They had to have original voice.
Yeah.
They had to be productive enough that they left a legacy. There's pieces of theirs in museums, pieces of theirs in private collections. So it wasn't always the same for each weaver. I really liked it when they continued their tradition. They taught their kids and grandkids, but neither Bessie or Daisy did that. So I couldn't leave them out.
Right.
So there was different criteria for different people. But there was a few ladies that I mentioned in my book should have been Master Weavers. They're not quite there yet. Now they're there.
Yeah.
So
how was it taken by the weavers of the community? What did they think about that?
Oh, they thought it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, a big customer for my book is Navajos, especially ones that have moved off the reservation and heard these things from their mothers and grandmothers, but never really knew it. And so they buy our book for the genealogy charts. And we have copies of all the genealogy charts. We're happy to give them just copies because it's their information.
Well, and you gave books to all the weavers too, didn't you?
Every weaver featured in the book was given a book.
Yeah.
And if they were deceased, which a lot of the weavers were deceased, we gave it to what we call the heir apparent.
Yes.
So that was the lady, it was always given to ladies. It was the lady least likely to pawn it. Because the book was valuable.
Yeah, it's an expensive book.
And so we signed them all to the weaver intended, although I'd present it to a daughter, and I'd say, to Marie Little Joe, to her daughter Victoria Minigoats, in honor of your mother, or honor of your grandmother. And so we signed all the books, and we gave one. We took pictures of me giving all the books to all of them, and so it was a big thrill. And then their relatives would see the book and they'd want one. And it's, like I said, especially if they're off the reservation because they knew this, but they don't know it anymore.
They don't have the history.
And so they come in all the time and they say, you know how my family's related to that family over there. And I go, well, let's go look it up together. So we look it up and they're really thrilled.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And when the grandmothers saw that I was really getting good at it and getting information, and I'd ask them a really obtuse question about, your grandmother's older sister's mother, something like this, they'd go, I just don't remember that anymore. And there was partially what you talked about of them not mentioning the names of dead people, but they kind of started getting over that with me because they knew I needed a name.
Yeah.
And so there was times when they'd say I couldn't remember. And a week later, the grandson would come in and say, my mom or my grandmother remembered that name and she made me write it down. Here's that name you wanted.
And is that because she felt more comfortable giving it to the grandson to give to you?
No,
she did remember it.
She finally remembered it.
Okay.
And so a lot of times it was just memory lapses, and so they were perfectly happy to give me the information. So I chased it back as many generations as I could. The oldest generation is Narbona, who was born in 1766, and he was killed by U.S. troops right out there about a mile or two from the trading post on August 31st, 1849. His descendants still weave for me today. So we have that genealogy chart starting in 1766. Many of our families went back to Bosque Redondo because when they were herded up to take it to Bosque Redondo, when they were allowed to come back, they went right back where they were. That was their home.
Yeah.
So those people have been there
since 1868.
At least since long before 1868.
But they came back to their home spot.
And so I used some public references for stuff, but I didn't really want to use many. I found out that that they started doing censuses out there in 1922 and 1923, and they basically feel they're completed by 1925.
I wonder if they did that because in 1924 is when they actually finally became citizens of the United States.
Probably, and so there was a little more responsibility to our citizens. And so they would bring me in their census sheets that they'd gotten for sort of grazing disputes, or for some reason they would have it. It was all kept at St. Michael's Mission. That's who did it, was the Franciscans, friars that were out there. But I found from listening to the stories and looking at the information that they literally would make everybody sitting in the same hogan that day part of the same family. So they would always show me this, but they'd always start telling me what was wrong with it. That person was really from a different clan, different family. He happened to be in the hogan. And so I realized that those weren't real reliable sources because everybody had a variation on it. So I decided purposely to never go to St. Michael's and look those charts up, although I know there's a lot of information there.
Try to get it firsthand.
It probably would have, So my book, I'm really proud, is firsthand information.
And so let's talk about that. So you've been doing this 21 years. You've written this great book. You're getting older.
Let me just finish one quick story for if I can. Virginia comes in after I bring a couple groups down there.
Yeah.
And she says, well, I had a Belagana come to my house today, wanted to buy my rug. And I said, did you sell it to him? She goes, no. And I said, well, why not? And she says, well, I told him that you bought it and you'd already given me a deposit on it and I couldn't sell it. And I'm going, well, Virginia, I haven't given you a deposit and I never bought a contemporary rug from a weaver. Well, you just liked it so much and you brought all those Belaganas to see it. I'm going, does that mean you want a deposit? She'd say, yeah, that'd be pretty good. So I gave her a deposit. That was my first rug.
That was your first rug?
That was my first rug. Bought in the summer of 1997.
So you started with one of the best.
Started with the best.
That's tough.
So,
but getting to that, what happens next?
So here's what happens next.
I mean,
a week goes by. Lady comes in. They never see the rugs when they come in. They're wrapped in a flour sack, pillowcase, a sheet, depending on how big of the rug. Yeah. She comes in wrapped up. I kind of figured what she had. And she says, and this is another real funny Navajo sort of thing, I want to give you my rug. I'm going, oh, cool, it's my birthday, I'd love a nice present. What do you got, And she goes, no, I mean, sell you my rug. But it's always, I want to give it to you.
Yeah.
That's just their language.
Yeah, that's the culture.
So I said, well, I think it's a beautiful rug. You did really good. I don't buy contemporary rugs, though. She goes, really? You bought one from my cousin? I went, uh-oh, I did buy one from her. Oh, you're Virginia's cousin? Yeah, she's my auntie and blah, blah, blah. I thought that was cool.
My very first teaching thing was actually in Sun City, Arizona, in Phoenix. I was painting somewhere up in Flagstaff or Prescott, and a newspaper person saw me, took pictures, and they did a little article. And then they said, Sun City Art Center said, will you come and teach? So I had to go to a hypnotist for 5 weeks to get the courage to do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
and did that help, by the way? Did the hypnotist help?
I got through it, but I don't know if it helped or not. But all I know now is if Wanda snaps her fingers, I do stuff for her. I think it's still programmed. She didn't tell me what they were doing there. But exactly. All of a sudden, I'll make her coffee or whatever. So, but yeah, things like that. All the little things that kind of I think were important for me to overcome fears. I think was take risk and overcome things that I was uncomfortable with. Even when I was doing advertising, I'd go up to one of the agencies and they're telling me the job they need to do. And my mind starts going blank thinking, I cannot do this. I'm just like, oh man, what am I going to do? But somehow I do it no matter what. I force myself through it.
And so when you're showing at that first gallery, you win the Purchase Prize, and then they get you you get in a gallery. Did you continue to do illustration, or did you?
Yeah, actually, at that time, I think I worked till about 1988 doing illustration, and I kind of, I was in galleries, and I didn't sell much, and I did a show, and sometimes I'd invest, in the frames and whatever. Let's say I had $10,000 was maybe all I had, but put it towards that and maybe sell one or two paintings. Again, taking a risk of believing in myself that moves to the next thing. And because I was still doing illustration, I had enough money to take those chances too. So like if I just quit cold, and I tell my students that also, and I say, worst case scenario, let's say you did one painting a day, a little painting, and sold it for $100. That's $3,000 a month. Can you live on that? Or find a way that you can do what you want to do. But if you have an employment and you can balance the two until the scales shift a little bit where you feel more comfortable, then you can leave that career and paint the things you want to paint. Instead of saying, oh, okay, I better paint, a cowboy on a burro because I know that sold last time at Settlers West or something. So you could easily get caught up in something that, why are you doing it? Why are you not, just staying in illustration if you're going to do a project that you have to do a certain way? Right. And so fortunately, when I was doing the illustration, Wanda was always adventuresome with me too. She worked with me, my wife. And I'd say, you want to go to New Zealand for 2 months? Sure, let's do that. So we'd, I'd call my clients and say, I'm leaving for a couple of months. And, many of my illustrator friends would say, you're going to lose all your business, all this. And, but I took that risk to do that and do it for myself and paint what I wanted to. And fortunately, wherever I went, I had imagery that would sell, whatever that subject I chose to do, as opposed to following the trend, what, you think you should follow.
Right. And you can get real pushback from some galleries. They'll be like, oh, I can't sell New Zealand stuff.
Oh, definitely. And over the years, 10 years ago, I started going to China. Right. And that was kind of just something that I was invited as a guest with Jason Situ invited me to go over with John Budison and Andy Evanson. You probably know both those guys. And Wanda, and we went there and painted and shared our experience with the museum there. And it was a real quick trip. I never thought about going to China, but it was interesting, and we were like celebrities. It was kind of funny. So then I took another group. I took 20 students of mine over there for 3 weeks, and we traveled different places. And I just really enjoyed the experience of meeting, such a diverse culture from what we're used to. And the people were interesting to me. And so then I said, I want to come back, learn the language. And so I went by myself for a month, and I didn't know a word. I didn't know a person. And I decided to paint portraits, which I didn't do for 35 years. Right. And so I just meet people on the street and ask if they pose for me. And they didn't know I was an artist, more or less, and didn't have expectations. I didn't have expectations on the quality because I'm painting a new subject, the portraits. So I think that was a good thing where, sometimes if you know what you should be doing and you don't succeed at it, you can get negative on yourself. So I went to a massage parlor and I met all the girls there, and that was like the mother lode of all the models. So every day they would hang out at my apartment, and that was the way to do it.
Yeah, I've looked at your portraits on your website too, and they're lovely. They're really beautiful.
Yeah, so that's been a really fun thing that, again, I wouldn't have, seen it in the plan. I wouldn't have said, okay, X year I'll start doing portraits. It just kind of evolved, and so it's a great way. It's kind of a shame right now with the way the world is, and now China and U.S. are having, political issues and stuff. But I met so many great people over there, and I volunteer with children all over the world when I go places, and I've done a lot of things in some really primitive areas in China, and met some wonderful people. And I go, in the most crude places. I meet people, and I paint their portrait, and I talk to them. I learn my Chinese as I'm doing the portrait, and it's an experience that creates a life experience. So it's just not painting in your studio and doing a good job, a great job, and making money. It becomes part of the life experience that I think keeps me engaged and keeps me excited to do things.
Yeah, and you also have a Chinese gallery too, right?
Yeah, well, we've done, for the last 5 years, I did my Reflections of the Pond project, which was 365 little paintings of my pond in front of my house.
And that's a book that you did as well.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, we did a book of that. And then, so that I still have that whole collection. And so I had to travel there for about 5 years. I just brought it back last year by chance. And then I have a gallery down in Guangzhou that, it's interesting to build the relationship there. It's different than our gallery way we deal things. So it's not easy.
How is it different? What is it different? In what way?
For one, China over the last, say, 10 years since I was going, the middle income type of person has developed very much more so than they ever had. So a lot of people are now traveling around the world and having an opportunity and being successful. Or, one time I was working with my publisher. They translated 2 of my books over there and are doing another one. And she took me to her mom and pop's place. Lived way in the country. They would plant trees for their life. Very simple, no toilets. And so I painted there and I gave him a painting. The only thing he had hanging in his house was a hat, and actually he told his daughter, he says, like, what do I do with this? Like, there wasn't, the average person, like what's behind you, you collect paintings, I collect paintings, and, average people in the US collect art, whether it's a decoration or a print or, different values.
Right.
That is not a norm there, so they don't have that as a way, say, for an artist like myself or, the many artists who can make an average living in the US, eking out, selling a few things, that'd be very difficult there. But some of the successful artists often work at a university, and that's almost reverse of what we have, like a university instructor. If you met one and he says, "Oh, I'm the art teacher at such and such," would you think, "Oh, this guy I better check him out," right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I get it.
So you know what I'm saying on that. Yeah. Like it usually isn't the high-end artist. And so a good artist who can work at the university on a high level can make a very good living over there and be treated extremely well. The average artist who is a good artist would have a very difficult time selling and creating an audience. And
Though China is really actively building museums, right? They've built some like 3,500 museums in the last 10 years or something.
Oh, I'm sure the amount of building is amazing.
And, it's clearly it's become more of a focal point for them as a country. It seems like it, for them to build all those museums and to make it, maybe they're trying to bring that to the masses more. I don't know.
Yeah, and actually the masses, you go to a museum and there's tons of people there appreciating. So, it's changing on that. And I think they're also appreciating their own culture again, their own art forms and celebrating that. So it was a learning experience. I met a lot of people and so many experiences, from very high-end people to the simplest people, living in
a just has a place for his hat.
Yeah, exactly.
What did he do with the painting? Do you know? Was he able to?
Oh, I bet if I went there, it would probably just be full of dust in the corner somewhere.
Yeah, probably.